evening, everyone. I'm hoping that everyone can hear me. My name is Michelle Smith-Mears. I'm the Executive Director of the Barbados Coalition of Service Industries. Today we want to explore, this is a short webinar. It's really a conversation. If you have any questions, you are free to put them in the chat and we will bring them to the panelists for you. Today we're looking at DeepSeek. China's answer to ChatGPT and OpenAI, and why does this matter to you? So the global AI landscape between the United States and China has intensified, with DeepSeek emerging as a formidable competitor to OpenAI, who we're all familiar with, by delivering high-performance models at a fraction of the cost. The AI industry, as you know, has been dominated by Western countries and companies, particularly OpenAI. However, DeepSeek's rise has shifted the landscape and has been raising some critical questions. So today's webinar is to explore DeepSeek's capability and the implications for AI competition, determine global superpowers, and why businesses, teachers, and service professionals must pay attention to these shifts in the AI ecosystem. To lead the conversation today, we are pleased to have with us Mr. Stephen Williams, who is the Principal Consultant, Data Privacy and Management Advisory Services, and Mr. Edward Millington, who is the Managing Director of Carisec Global. And I know that they have very passionate views about DeepSeek, and I look forward to the discourse today. So I want to first invite to make an opening remarks to Stephen Williams. Stephen?
Good evening, everyone. A special thank you for the invitation to share my thoughts with BCSI and those people who are joining us today on this webinar. Kudos to the BHDA for identifying the need to have this level of discourse. With that out of the way, let me say that it has been a monumental and very interesting ride since January 20th, when DeepSeek version R1 was released. So DeepSeek is a large language model or natural language model, which you can basically ask it questions and it uses natural language to respond. These models are trained in, what is seemingly all text. All types of information is just kind of dumped in a big database, and then you basically ask a question, give you back answers. That's the simplest way to put it. What has made the whole situation so interesting is the fact that America has been pushing as the leader that if you want better advancement, you have to invest in compute. What it means is basically hardware resources. So the more hardware you invest in, the bigger, bigger buying or bigger buck, bigger buying. So when R1 was released, and this is a Chinese version called DeepSeek, released their version of artificial intelligence, just like ChatGPT, which we know a little more about, because that's the one that got this whole industry rolling as it is today, about almost 4 years ago now. And the interesting thing about DeepSeek was the cost to develop it, or the public cost they disclosed, was the first thing, the public cost. There's some contention that it might not be the whole cost, but the public cost they disclosed was millions, not hundreds of millions of dollars to train this model. But that was not the interesting thing for me. The interesting thing for me that made this topic relevant is the fact that it showed the working. A large part of the problem with artificial intelligence up to this point was that how it thought and reasoned was considered intellectual property by whichever developer, whether it be OpenAI, the owners of ChatGPT, or Anthropic's Claude, which is another large language model like OpenAI, or even Google's Bard. No one showed their working to say how these things reason to get from point A to point B. they were willing to actually show how the AI model worked and show thinking, show reasoning, and line by line, it actually said, it's kind of open up the head and see the thought process. That was what triggered, right, this whole avalanche because that was novel. So it was a kind of a combination of things. It was the fact that it was so cheap to do, which caused the stock markets to tank because what companies like OpenAI were selling was that you need the most expensive processing, we call GPUs, graphical processing units, the most expensive, very costly type of infrastructure that was costing hundreds of millions. What people argued was that no, you're going about it all wrong. And I'm going to get to the Bayesian relevance right now. What they said was that yes, you can continue doing that, but it's a never ending pit. You have to keep spending more and more and more money. What they did was re-look AI from the ground up and say, is this the most efficient way that America is saying it can be done? The answer was no. It was not the most efficient way. Actually, it was very inefficient and very costly because from an environmental standpoint, these servers, the more servers you have, you keep adding, and eventually you have costs in terms of the energy resources being drawn upon as opposed to like more efficient code. So they optimize the software built for it to make it more efficient. They thought looked the whole process and then they came up with this R1 model. That caused the stock market to crash because then investors realized, oh my gosh, you don't need to have all of this money and resources to basically build out AI to the level of a top tier level of an elite level like OpenAI. I will stick a pin there and let Edward jump in with his thoughts on it. But yeah, Michelle, that's my opening remark.
Thank you, Stephen. Edward.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Stephen has left a concrete for me to try to fill. The advent of deep sea. I keep on calling it deep state. I don't know why because really and truly, it's really from a state point of view, the innovation of it and so forth. But one of our real concern, because innovation will always tend to happen, you can't get around that. Someone be able to look at, can we better do something? Can we optimize it to work better? Um, what China has really done, I think, is extraordinary in terms of using less power to be able to achieve results. And as Stephen would have said, that really hit the stock markets or hit many companies that was, putting a lot of money into the development of AI. But from our particular approach, especially from a risk approach, is you will always have innovation, you will always have these types of peaks within any development of any solution, whether it regards as a car or whatever else it would be. But our main concern is what everybody keep on hearing, the responsible use of AI, in its development, in its deployment. Is it trustworthy? And I think that's one of the main things that we in the Caribbean have to really kind of focus on because how are you teaching this AI, you know? Um, right now, AI in its particular sense, especially large language models and so forth, is non-transparent in terms of how it operates. And from our risk approach is the governance that's being put in place to make sure that the correct deployment or correct development and deployment and utilization that can be risk assessed so that in other words to reduce not only risk to businesses and persons but also to democracies. So that's my bit for the evening. Because I know we're going to need a lot more time when we start to discuss.
So let me throw a question at you. I see that the US is, maybe I shouldn't say this, but kind of trying to vilify or criminalize the use of DeepSeek. So those of us that use AI, and Stephen actually introduced me to AI a while ago, and I find it quite indispensable because I use ChatGPT quite a lot, and I mean we use AI every day with our cell phones and everything else. Um, our concern, because when I saw this DeepSeek thing come out, I was like, oh, well, let's maybe use this. And you know that in the Caribbean, we are consumers of AI. We are not influencing AI in any way. And by consuming it, we are teaching AI because we are using it and giving it all the information. And my question is, what happens to that information? Where is it going? The US is upset, but literally, if I'm using OpenAI, ChatGPT, whatever, it means that I'm giving the US company my information. The US is claiming that if we use DeepSeek, we are giving China information. And what I want you two to discuss is who's better to give our information to, because somebody can get it. Is it true that should we be wary of China getting our information and be free to give it to a US company?
And let Stephen take that one first as a privacy person.
Okay. So it's Michelle, that's an excellent question. And I would say if I was the governor of Barbados, I'd give it to any why I alluded to it at the end when I said what DC offers is a unique opportunity
Can
for the
I,
Caribbean
Stephen, can
North.
I, Stephen, can I jump in? Depending on how you move or how you sit, you're breaking up.
Okay.
Okay,
Let me slow down a little bit.
so you're good there.
So let me say it, I alluded to it when I said this presents an opportunity for Barbados and Barbadians. One of the things that DC offers is for the ability to have it installed locally on, I would put it, above average systems for efficient use. So I'm not talking about a run-of-the-mill laptop you get off the shelf, maybe, but something with a little oomph to it, a little power to it. You can install it and run efficiently, as opposed to giving your data to either the United States or the thinking is that we're running the cloud, but DeepSeek offers the ability to run it locally. And I will tell anyone, you don't have to connect that machine to the internet. You can install it on a local computer, take it right off the internet, or have it on a local network. It runs locally, and none of the superpowers get your data. But the question you asked was, who should we give the data to because someone is going to get it? I don't think it makes a difference either the two. I honestly don't think so. I don't want to get into geopolitical debate, but I would say this. We don't know at any point in time. We've used Microsoft Windows now for years. We don't know if Microsoft has extracted data from its use of the operating system and given it to the United States government. One of the reasons why I have my service in Canada, because there's certain laws in Canada that says that any information on a United States server, United States government has the right to access. And for years that has been so. If it's the one country that did not respect privacy, especially international countries' privacy, is the United States. There are programs called Carnivore. There's a CIA program called Carnivore that went into systems and tapped government leaders of other countries, mobile devices and systems. So the United States is not any more trustworthy than China, and China any more trustworthy than the United States. So if your privacy in terms of like government and what you do is at a very high level is important to you, my suggestion is learn to install DeepSeek or learn to install a large language model that can run on your local system yourself. It's not that difficult. And I think that that's where the industry is going to go. Because right now, part of the problem is a lot of the benefits from artificial intelligence is like medicine, healthcare records. I'm not going to allow any doctor to upload my medical data to my AI. And if I found out, oh, as Edward said, I'm a privacy specialist, I'm going to be hopping mad. So, but I would like my doctor to be able to use artificial intelligence to glean some inside my medical history, but local to their system. So this is one opportunity, right? I am tapping into as well. And I'm looking to build out solutions for people to be able to use it locally, right? Because at the end of the day, I don't want my personal data, sensitive data like medical history, being studied by no foreign nation.
So DeepSeek, you're saying that the difference with DeepSeek is that you can install it locally. Does it continue to get intelligent? Does it continue to learn when it is used by you locally? And then you also have the incidences of updates because I mean you might download a particular version keeps changing, so it has to update. How do we do that? I mean, how do we know, but do we even care? Because I mean you're using it anyway. Um, how do we know that when it updates, it doesn't take as well?
Okay, so here's the thing. It would not update unless you connect it to the internet and you download an update package. Let's be frank. However, remember, if you're using it for a corporate data, so let's say, for example, the same medical clinic, right? It will learn your data records in terms, it will learn to mine your existing data. It might not be able to give you new medical diagnosis, or it might be able to actually do certain things that require the internet connection to actually validate, but it can learn medical records, learn like the current package that it would have at that point in time has a lot of functionality already. So there may be some small nuances that may need to be updated, but think about it, maybe once a year is necessary, all right? And therefore you can work with a cybersecurity professional or IT professional to have it securely updated once a year, right? The package installed, tested, right? And then taken offline. So maybe, for example, I can take DeepSeek offline for a maintenance period, update it, and continue going. Because for a long time, GPT will say, I have not been trained up to, or I've only been trained up to 6 months, 8 months. But what you really want is the information that a large language model have to be trained on your intelligence. So therefore, it will search your network or your files and give you insight on your data. So if you want to get general information, a general body of information, well, then get an open account and ask general questions. So go online on a separate machine, separate network or whatever, right? And then use it for that particular purpose. But if you want to get it specifically targeted and given insight on your intellectual property, well, then I would suggest to install copy that's not connected to the internet, all right, to actually be that type of AI for you.
Edward, what's your take on who's best to give this information to? Because either way, we're giving information to somebody.
Yeah, I think what needs to be considered here is that in this particular case, there is some level of discomfort between America and China. And whenever you have two countries or more than one countries, etc., you're going to have this type of rhetoric. Now, outside of that, as Stephen would have mentioned, privacy, really and truly, we have to understand as a, maybe like I say, a sovereign country, what we consider to be private for us. Regardless if the servers are, in this particular case, if for real learning, servers are held regardless if it's in Canada, in Europe, or whatever place it would be, at some point in time, even behind the scenes, that data can easily be accessible. What concerns us very much as risk managers or as AI management system implementers and so forth is in terms of what Stephen would have mentioned, it learns and so forth. But what we're really not looking at is the trustworthiness of such systems. Um, is it providing the information in the correct format? Does it has alternative agendas? You know, again, these large language models are actually taught on existing data. Now, in addition to the development of the DeepSeek itself and any other AI, it has shown us that when you rush certain developments to the market, it can be riddled with many vulnerabilities. And this would have been shown from the exploits of, again, getting persons or getting the information or persons using the solution, contact information. You also have situations where, as Stephen would have mentioned, yes, you can download it and have it run separately. There's also another issue that such models can be compromised, ability to do other things they're not supposed to do. Yes, it has to be updated at some point in time, but there is a deployment of AI tools through many organizations, etc., and have not been fully security tested. And I think this is going to be a very important factor, not only for DeepSeek, but for any other open AI solution or any AI solution, to put it that way, need to be properly evaluated before deployed within whether it's a government, etc.
You're referring to use at government level with public data.
Yeah, it doesn't make a difference. It could be any data. It could be public. It could be for any organizations, NGOs. It doesn't make any difference. The fact is that it is using data. If in terms of data concern itself, it is using data. Our concern is not only within the privacy, but it's to make sure that the results or the output, what you put in and the output, you get the output that is determined to either the industry that you're in or the request that is made through it.
But what are the real security risks posed by DeepSeek in comparison with any other foreign developed technology? Because as I said, we are consumers and we do give a lot of information over to people when we register for foreign technologies, even whatever it is, whatever we're using online, because we are not using local we're not really using a whole lot of local technologies, and largely they are from superpowers. What is the real risk? I'm still trying to find out what is the threat of deep sea over any other over ChatGPT, OpenAI. Why is there so much opposition to this new AI? There will always be new entrants to the market. Is it because it's Chinese technology, or is it truly the race for domination as it relates to sovereignty over global information?
Um, Going back to what Stephen would have said, it is a threefold. One is an adversary, which is China. Number two, they have demonstrated, quote unquote, to develop AI system at a very small cost that can run even on some of the persons here might be familiar, Raspberry Pi, you know. And then you have the third approach really is that it have demonstrated, to many developers and countries, or I always call it deep state, to the states that not American states, but states in general, globally, that you can do this here with the right initiative. And that has taken a blow to many developers or many countries that have been trying to get AI to be at this particular level. So again, it's not let's say a one approach, but it is a multi-dimensional approach that deep state has caused or at least upset the environment, upset the AI development environment per se.
Cuba?
Michelle, let me jump in here. Let me jump in here and say, to answer your question directly, there's no difference. It's just where your country sits in the global landscape. Let me explain. AI, by all scientists and by all pundits, is the revolutionary game changer. It's like the new internet. When the internet came, everyone said this was revolutionary, and the internet has been revolutionary. They're deeming AI just like the light bulb. It's one of those human trajectory things that transforms the world as we know it. America has remained the superpower because it has maintained its dominance concerning technology. China is challenging that dominance by being equal to them in their technological dominance. There's a saying, who controls AI or who has the most immersive and impressive AI would basically be controlling the world markets. AI can AI well AI in the future, so AI like maybe 3 years from now can predict things like hurricanes better, stock markets better, medical diagnosis better. Right now, the last thing I saw this morning, it was actually coming up with new metals like iron, like a new type of iron and metal. So imagine if you are a country where iron or all these different components, steel, cannot be upended, right? Cannot be upended with I guess, a synthetic compound comprised of AI because your AI now can make things faster cheaper, and never things that never existed before somehow materialize because of AI. Microsoft now has something, I can't remember the name of it, but they now have a technology that is focused on just generating types of metal components. Is there between China and the United States from the Caribbean? None. This is a geopolitical problem. And I'll explain why. America is dependent, although it's not getting on so today, on everyone buying into their dominance. Meaning that if the world starts to see China as an alternative to United States technological dominance, then part of their economy is built on the fact that if you want it done properly, better, and you have the number one thing, well, then, that individual, those countries, those business opportunities will go to the United States. But if you don't see that there are two competitors within the market, it kind of splits their economy because people, you know what? China is closer to me, or China has done well. And why China has become such a threat to the United States is just not about AI. If you look across the landscape of Barbados, I said this before, and I've written on it. China has done more for countries like the Belt and Road Initiative, where Africa, the Caribbean, have been benefiting from the wash pan of money that they have. And by extension, if you now start to add AI dominance on top of that, which would now transform economies, it would be China led. But there's no geopolitical, or I should say, there's no security difference, and there's no particular threat to the Caribbean. There's a threat to the United States dominance and market dominance. So to the United States, China is a threat, but China is no threat to Barbados, right? As more so the United States, and that's the truth.
Is DeepSeek a threat to the Caribbean or a benefit to the Caribbean?
Benefit.
In
As
what way?
as okay.
Sorry, Edward.
As Stephen stated, there's no difference between any of the open AI. Again, the seek recipe dominance is really being pushed by media at this particular point as an existential threat to America. Again, as Stephen would have said, any country that has AI and a functioning and working AI that can outcompete any other AI on the market, have that market dominance, regardless if it's going to be political, technological development, etc. And we all know of in times of the past, people went to war for water and for many other things. This is no difference here. And if you want, and as Stephen would have mentioned, and we hear it quite often in the news, if you want to create a dominant market, use media around it. And we have seen media used over a period of time. So it's no difference from a security point of view. You will find, and this happens, there might be a new version of ChatGPT come out, maybe version 5, version 6, and it have some issues. There is no security difference. Yes, it's going to come and go. For us within the region, what we need to look at, and again, we call this noise, what we need to look at is to go beyond the noise and say, look, there are multiple areas across the world. What is the Caribbean doing to develop its own large language models? What is it doing to develop solutions that can fit our particular region, our culture, our social development, etc.? I think that's from a more security point of view, we should be looking to make sure that these models, in terms of how it communicate and interact with us, are not transforming us to be like another country. I think that's what we need to be looking at because you will find vulnerabilities in everything. But what we should be more concerned about is not only what is taught, as we already know in terms of facial recognition and being able to understand our language. The fact is, how are these systems being taught and are they slowly transforming us into somebody else's culture? That's what you should be more concerned with.
So someone asked a question, and Stephen, I'm going to get back to you on the benefits, but someone asked a question that where are the concerns for things like Pokemon, privacy concerns, for things like Pokemon Go, TikTok, and other social media platform, or what about cell phones? We're already giving away things like WhatsApp and
Yeah,
Facebook
well,
and all those things. We're already giving away a lot of data without thoughts. Um, that I don't know if that was a question, it was a statement. I don't know if you want to respond to that.
Okay. So yeah, there's a fundamental difference. Yes, Pokemon Go, TikTok, and all these platforms give away data, but it's a certain type of data. Um, Take for example, when you use TikTok to promote yourself, the image and like and talk. However, when you know corporate business and corporate intelligence, uploading your business documents, uploading medical records, these things are not nothing to do with Pokemon or TikTok. So if I choose to upload my image and likeness to TikTok and do a stupid little dance or whatever, or talk about clothes or soca and walking up, and I take my image and likeness, that's one type of data theft, and that has value. I'm not minimizing that. However, when you start to use these large language models and AI tools to now start to create corporate documents, right? When you start to train it on your medical data, right? Stephen has X or Stephen has Y, right? And you start to train it on things that are deeply personal, things like financial data. Pokemon don't want my financial data, all right? TikTok is not asking me about my financial data. So if I use TikTok, there's very low, say impossible. It's unlikely that TikTok is going to get my financial data. But when I know what to start to dive into analysis of my company's performance, and I'm going to use artificial intelligence to do it, basically you're training the AI model on your financial data or your healthcare data or data that is deeply personal that you might not be thinking of in relation to that.
Yeah, or using it to write things like legal documents and business plans and stuff like that.
Let's
Yeah,
say
Um,
a
so
little let's say a little bit more
talk about
different.
that.
We have something called narrow AI. And while Pokemon they might have some attribute is if you want to consider something being narrow, Pokemon and TikTok has key specific functions, nothing more. When we talk about AI, we want to model human and move away what we call narrow AI that has specific uses and more uses within our particular life. And that is what this is where its growth path is being led to. So from a data governance and someone that answers within the questions I answered and so we will answer it live. Data governance when it comes around AI and how it's being used. And remember that one AI is being used to train another. So Pokemon is not training TikTok. So if you understand that, it means then that you're going to have, and I made this statement, it is a non-transparent process that is going on. AI into our life can be considered transparent because we know it's there, it's being told. But what is really doing in the background? What is going on? How is it simulating data? Where is the data going, etc.? It's very non-transparent. How it use that data to derive answers. Are we sure we're getting those correct answers? So when it comes to data governance, um, businesses or any person or any company looking to even develop an AI within the infrastructure to help give them that market edge need to understand that you cannot look at AI in a very ping eye hole. You have to look at it in a more broad scope. So it's not only you have to look at maybe data governance and what you're feeding it with, if that data has good integrity, it is ethical. The fact is you still need to make sure that how that data is being processed to get that output is trusted. And I think that's the main thing that many persons are, and we see this when we're writing something. We see that we have one particular meaning, we might want to say it differently, and change the whole format. So we have to get to a point to, especially here within the region, and this is where it came up, especially when it comes to democracies. How is it changing society? How is it changing particular results or changing terminologies, mindsets, and so forth? And I think that's one of the things that we tend to miss a little bit. We see it again, I'm going to repeat it. We see it again when we are writing documents, when we try to use maybe Grammarly and other solutions. But the fact is, we're still ignoring that there is risks when it comes to that same terminology, whether it's in medical science, um, driving a car, looking at data to estimate, you still have that percentage error that persons, again, might not even understand. When we go and buy an AI solution, does it have written on the box percentage error? Out of 10 questions, is it one incorrect? Is it 10 incorrect? So we don't have that type of data for us within the region. And that's what I'm saying is that we need to start looking and focus on doing our own development. Let us create, yes, it will take maybe a little while, but you know what? You know what China has shown us? When you are restricted based on possibly money, equipment, maybe I don't know. We sometimes Americans like to use terms. We have the best of minds, but look, we had I think about two persons, a small group that was able to say, you know what, we don't have the resources. Let us optimize what is there. Let us not just be putting money towards or investing money to something that doesn't work. So we need to. And I'm very sorry that we didn't have, I forget was his name, Charles from the Five Island campus, forget was his last name, here to say, you know what, how are we developing everything in the region so that it best suits us? And we don't have to be worried about things like this here.
Even I see you were chiming in, but the question he was dealing with was what data governance practices do you recommend to ensure data integrity and privacy in AI project? But I know you want to chime in based on what Edward just said.
Well, I want to answer that question because I think it's a very, very, very good question. What did the governance do I recommend? First thing, I was on the board of a company, right, a government board recently, and I told them, have the discussion. First of all, you have to know how staff, well, first of all, if staff are using AI right now. Everyone say, yeah, staff are using it. But then you have to know how they're using it. Right? So if they're using it, why they want to use it, how they're using it, all right, and what data, right, they're using it with. So that's the first part of data governance, right? So if you look at that, if you get that answer, you can start having something called a data governance policy. You can't have a policy for something you do not understand. So the first thing management has to do is to basically answer those questions. When you answer those questions, you can now start to determine, well, look, I really do not have a data governance model because you're using sensitive data that my company don't want to get out in the public and in the people's street and road to be efficient, and we want you to be efficient. So it comes down to understanding, do you have even a data classification model? Meaning what's critical, what's high risk, what's medium, what's low. So low be like what's on the website.
But
No one
Stephen,
cares.
but Stephen, um, so I understand having a AI policy or data AI policy, whatever that is. But I mean, you can say on your network, you could set up your network that people cannot access, for instance, porn while they're at work. But I don't think that I don't know if AI has any control measures. So you might say to me, this is our policy and this is the only information you could use on AI, but how do you control when somebody's at their desk working on something and wants to get it done quickly? How do you control what they ask AI to do for them? I don't think that AI has any control that limit that at this point.
Okay, so let me answer that. That's why I was very, very deliberate when I said data governance model. If you have a data governance model that classifies your data, that means that when you know create a file, it'll be classified as critical, high, whatever. You can have a firewall that does a application layer security where it looks for any data like this and blocks it from leaving your network. And you get a little pop-up violation, critical data, leaving network. So therefore, you let the cybersecurity people know, tune the firewall to look for these tags. That's
Mm.
what's going to make it difficult because most companies don't have a data governance model. Most companies look at cybersecurity model. Data governance model is different. Is a different kind of genre. It is all within the same family of security, agreed, but data governance models look at how you classify data, the quality of data, the type of data, right? And then cybersecurity takes over to make sure that once it fits a certain criteria, that it doesn't leave the organization, or if it is medium or medium to low, it maybe it's tight, to know what sort of information is leaving, always to have a record of what information leaves the organization. But if it's critical or high in terms of risk, right, firewall blocks that. So most organizations block everything. They don't know what the blocking, blah, blah, blah. We don't let in Word documents leave the company at all, or Excel documents leave the company at all. That's unproductive. When you have a data governance model, understand what type of data your organization processes, uses, understands, right, in terms of what it does, in terms of its business model, you can now start to tag the data. The firewall takes over, or the application firewalls take over to make sure that that type of data does not leave the organization. Michelle, give me 1 second. A question was asked earlier and no one answered, right? Which was, how does working model differ from OpenAI's chain of thought? We've gone so far down. The question was, what is different between OpenAI's chain of thought model and DeepSeek? The fact is, because one is open. So yes, OpenAI is now showing they're working, but that was the model before January 20th. So that's the answer to that question. So they're doing the same thing now, only because R1 forced them. Only because DeepSeek forced them to show they're working, to show how the AI is thinking, right? Did OpenAI even attempt to do it?
Thanks. I was just actually going to go back to there's another question here. What are the thoughts on the accuracy of this LLM and any opportunity to build on top of the model locally while training on internal use case data?
Okay,
I'm
I'm breaking down. I got and break that down. So, what's the opportunity of building our own while using while using it while building our own? That's the question. So we want to use it locally, training it, right? What's the practicality of doing that right now? Is the question. It was a lot. It was
what
very
are
wordy,
your
so I just want to
thoughts
make
on
sure.
the accuracy of it?
Or the accuracy.
Accuracy, yeah.
The weights are out there in terms of how accurate it is, right? But here's the beautiful thing. If you want to be lazy and accurate, it's a possibility too, right? But a human in loop means is that you're going to use it, read through it, use the intelligence that is still superior for right now, and determine if it is accurate enough. I think one of the things that frustrate me about Barbadians in general is that we're seeking perfection. If I submit a paper for grading at doctorate level, there's going to be some flaws about it. But the difference is, is the majority of information I'm being graded on correct? There's no such thing as perfection. That's God's business. What we should be seeking to do is to have a level of excellence in what we deliver in whatever we do. So if you're looking for perfection, so it's completely no human would ever get it. Hardly any way would ever get it. We are talking perfection at a level of a very high functioning level that it represents excellence. Some things may be wrong, but does it provide an excellent output or a good enough output that we could now use in our operations and business operations and life?
Michelle, let me add a little bit to that there too. And I would have alluded to it before. Any deployment of AI within, let's say within context, needs to be at least tested. We know that within certain sectors, when it comes to medical and financials, and because of the risk, they will normally perform some level of testing. But this has to be the approach with AI within the region. And I think we need to lead that direction. There is no statement that I'm aware of that state that for every 10 or 1 million questions, what the error rate would be like what we see in other technologies that is developed. Understanding that when you look at many of the standards, regardless if it's a NIST standard, some persons might be familiar with NIST AI Risk Management Network, or the ISO 42001 Artificial Intelligence Management System, which amalgamates so many different standards in it. You have to understand that there has to be some level of review of an AI before you start to use it. And until persons can understand that, you're going to have to realize, you know what, if I don't test this here, anything's possible. So therefore, if you want to understand that error rate, if you want to understand how accurate AI is, you're going to have to take the time to go through to test those large language models with the different data you have, and then determine use human at the beginning and human at the end to determine how accurate that data is.
On the subject of language, the question is language going to be an issue for the Caribbean when it comes to support for Chinese AI?
I've been to China, and I can tell you, we get along fine. Most Chinese right now have American first names or English first names. Unlike us, where Spanish is supposed to be our second language, and we don't care to learn anyone else's language. China understands that if it wants to export its technology, their culture, they're going to have to learn the most dominant language is English. So a lot of Chinese people speak very good English. Some people probably speak better than the average Barbadian, right? And the ones that, to me, are engaged in a high functioning area of business already have English as a second language and speak it very well. In terms of the EA itself, um, I think Edward was right. There are going to be some cultural, I guess, comes to even certain Bayesian words, for example. I won't call any of them that we use quite often in our everyday life that it probably have not a clue. And there's certain cultural nuances that it would not necessarily understand. That's not a friction, or if friction doesn't have to be a bad thing, it's an opportunity, whether it be our music, our language, or telling our story. It is not something that is limiting AI, as in it is not limited because it can't handle this. It provides an opportunity for us. I was telling someone before, I said, what this is an opportunity for them to do is to take a catalog, right? Work with the AI and get royalties right now from some of the cultural differences that make us who we are. Because if we sit down and wait until these people understand what it means to be Beijing, no one benefits from it, right? Then we would have just be consumers at a very poor functioning level. So, as Edward said, we can build our own. That's one route to go. We can now decide to take catalog of poetry, music, entertainment, and say, you know what, let's package this, all right, and license it to an AI platform, all right, and get royalties from it. That's the way to go, all right. Or we can still wait till they realize after doing everyone else, because first of all, I'll tell you, Caribbean is not a market. 8 million people is not a market. That's 8 million people is a city in the United States, all right? It's not a market. That's why it doesn't understand our nuance yet because we aren't worth investing in yet. But we value ourselves. So this is where the opportunity lies. Well, they are getting around to us. We could be capitalizing on that circle of production or development. So they're worried about us yet. They're worried about the Chinese fish and the Russian fish and all the market fish. That's good. Let them focus on that. But the opportunity to basically deal with it. Said I made a government suggestion. Someone said basically that you can copy and paste it. If I have 2,000 documents, I'm not going to sit and copy and paste everything to bypass the rules. That'll make no sense. one bit of data, when I have 2,000 records in a room or 40,000 records in a room, like healthcare data, I went into a doctor's office, a doctor, single doctor, and she had a room where the files were falling off. Am I going to, as an assistant, try to copy that one by one to upload to GPT? That's not training. Training is uploading those 20,000 records one time, all right? So to have historical or analytical view based on trends and analysis and consistency of information. But a one copy and upload.
Sanitize documents.
Yeah, I remember though that when people were saying that Chat um GBT spoke American. Do you remember that? When people were saying that it didn't understand Caribbean nuances, but funnily enough, we were playing with it and I wrote something and then we said to edit it in Beijing. And it actually did really well. It literally did it in Beijing dialect. because you said a
There
billion
you
dollar
go.
How do you
in
think it got
Jamaican
there?
dialect, and
How
it
do you
didn't
think it got
make
there? How do you think it got there? Because again, the more persons that use AI, the more it learns. It's not a hard set something. It's going to learn. So, as Stephen mentioned, 8 million or more, even if it's a billion, it's still far compared to or what some of the bigger countries have. So if you have developers in those countries, I mean, I remember one time a number of years ago, and it still exists a couple of years ago, where if you had a look at Barbados, the developers in America have Barbados only from America. You could not select Barbados. You had to go to America and select
America.
Barbados. It was like a state
We're
of
not,
so
we're not America, correct?
if you understand that if we want to develop as a culture and keep our culture, we're going to have to start developing tools that suits our environment. When China developed the tools, yes, it will suit the environment. There will be export tools for different markets, but it might not reach its full credence. So therefore, I think the thought when it comes to deep seek is to start saying, you know what, this is a wake-up call for the Caribbean, to have easy access because we don't have the finances to have, these massive data centers to do stuff that we know can be able to have or create or to utilize what's existing out there to have something that suits our economics, our culture, political characteristics, and the whole list goes on. Um, Very soon, I will be able to share with you. I think I read in a piece on AI and cybersecurity, governance, risk management in the age of intelligent system. And one of the things that would have seen, especially during the American elections, is the possible use of AI to change culture, change what people think about each particular candidate. You have a lot of deep fake, the audios, pictures, and the list goes on. So our democracy is under threat. Now, is that important for us? Is our stability important to us? When we start to simulate cultures that are not ours, what happens? Is it we're going to see a high level of crime? A high level of selfishness, a high level of certain products that persons might want that has no bearing within our particular country. How do we take care of disposal of certain products and services and so forth? There's so many things that we have to learn. And not only that our young ones are coming up, they're using AI. How is it changing them? So from our approach, we take more of it from a holistic approach. Say, yes, these things will happen, these will create, but how are we teaching these things? If we send our child to a different school that teaching them hate and so forth, what are you going to think is the results? And if we're teaching them in a subliminal way, what is going to be the results? So therefore, we have to look at, not saying AI is bad, 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 but I'm saying is that there's a good and there's a bad rate, and we need to understand that. We need to understand that when we come to deploy it within our organization, when we want to put it into schools, it has to be well tested to make sure that it will provide the results. Because once you, as Stephen would have mentioned, you have everybody should be under some data protection law. Every business is dealing with some data subject from some part of the world. So they're not only covered by Barbados data protection law. So therefore, all of these things are supposed to be in place and not haphazard. And I think that's why we're seeing some of the questions that we are getting because everyone think is a push button. We have to understand that as we use technology going forward, we need to have a holistic plan, strategic approach to how we utilize things and not just come put, hope for the best, and then we fix afterwards. That might be a good methodology, but we are living in times where if we don't be careful, and we saw this here a good few years ago, where even quite recently too, where children challenge other children to even commit death. It doesn't make sense. Why would you go and hang yourself and videotape yourself? But the fact is that the mind is conditioned. They're not thinking. So we have to realize that our AI is going to be in so many different parts. We have to secure it. If you're in a medical environment, we need to make sure that AI is trustworthy. We are using it responsible because I'm certain if I don't like Steven, you know what? I'm gonna pay some hacker or do it myself because I have the hacking as a service, we want to call it that. And I go into a facility, change his prognosis and say he got some brain problem and he got a problem with his foot, and you know that today we are so technology driven. Technology is right. So we're not going to go back and check because everything is now has been digitized and in a system. We're no longer dealing with paper anymore that we can go back and check with the doctor. And even then, some of the doctor is not quite sure he's doing, I may make a mistake. So we have to understand that our trust in technology goes up the more we feel that something is very accurate.
All right. At this point, if if there's anyone on the webinar that wants to open their mic and ask a question, we can do so. No, but let me just ask this last question. The person says, correct me if I am wrong. If you have DeepSeek deployed locally, will it be as secure as your local cybersecurity? Also, as far as I'm aware, is it open source? So you could just have the code inspected and hardened if it is a concern.
Let me answer that
Yes.
question. It is going to be secure, but it depends on what, and Stephen can highlight here. We are in the Caribbean where data privacy is really not our culture. We don't think much of it. It's only if we had to travel and someone say that we committed a crime in another country and here's your picture and everything, and here's you speaking and everything, then we realize that our quote unquote digital self is so much important. What persons are failing to understand, and DeepSeek have shown this here because they have persons that quote unquote exploit it and highlight that you can tamper with the large language models and so forth. While you might be saying that, okay, it is safe on the network, the fact is, how is it providing those answers? How is it changing maybe the way of how you potentially can do business, right? Um, Take, for instance, um, see, a little bit older than me. We remember the Three Card Men at near around Cape Shepherd area, the Three Card Men, and then Bay Street. You come, you play, and you win. You feel good. And they look at you and smile. And then after that, you're losing. The fact is, are these models safe enough in the interim? I think you're on mute, Stephen. Are these models safe enough that you can sit down, let's say after the 1,000 input, that you can say, you know what, every other input is going to be correct, or some variants of that is going to start to change you. This is what people need to be more concerned when we hear the Europeans talk a lot about AI trustworthiness. That is very important. And they have classified AI into 4 different categories: critical, high, medium, and low risk. High risk within the legal environment, medical environment, in industry, and so forth. The trustworthiness becomes very important. And I think persons need to look at that. Not only look at the fact that you take it off the network because you think a back door might be opening. The fact is that you still have to consider the trustworthiness of those LLMs.
I'm going to take a different approach. Um, and this is where we're talking about DC. There's something called Microsoft Copilot, and we are Microsoft Office environment free. So once Microsoft Office environment, which is Word, Excel, it now has built-in AI into it now, which does comes very close to what DeepSeek is doing. You see, we are conditioned, and as you keep going back to this, we are conditioned to feel less threatened by America than China. Let me start there. We feel less threatened by America than China. Because we say, is DeepSeek safe? Is DeepSeek safe? Is Microsoft Copilot safe? Is is OpenAI safe? So that's the first thing we have. We are putting our toe in the water concerning China and DeepSeek. So is it safe? Is the water safe to go in? But we playing in the American pool. We have Microsoft Office with basically the same thing. And I bet we didn't touch on that. But it does basically the same thing on the answers on your machine here, going off into Microsoft's server as well. So therefore, is Azure safe? So the question is, I would say this. Is DeepSeek running locally on my machine from a data privacy standpoint more safe? Yes, because I can secure that. I can take it off the network as an independent narrow machine. So I just feed it all of my um, medical information or my accounting information and take it off the network. So all I can do is run that machine. Or if you want to put it on the network, I can have a very deep thinking firewall for those people who are less technical. So basically it scans every packet going in and out, and I can see where the packets are going. So if it's going to China, I can go like, but where are you going to China? I can actually see with a firewall now where the packets are going in the direction the information is going. Firewalls have become that technically capable. So if you're paranoid about that, there are ways to protect it, but I can't protect anything going to OpenAI or Copilot because they're built right in. Well, Copilot is built right into Office and is right there, willing to assist you. But we don't really challenge that. All right. OpenAI, we feel comfortable with that because it's American, but DeepSeek, no. So the question is, do we want to be governed by the states or China? And that in itself is the question. Which master do we want? And that's the only question. All right. In terms of keystrokes, so the question is a concern that DeepSeek tracks keystrokes. Is that a concern for AI programs? The question is the AI program online or is it offline? If it's online, possibly. Is it offline? Maybe. But even so, it will have to get a connection to get to send those keystrokes out. So even if I didn't go through the code and realize that the code isn't clean, I will still have to find a way to get off and take my data back. Right? That's a possibility too. It's not improbable. It's not impossible. It's improbable if I have that machine segmented, right? And like, no one could get to it in terms of internet connection. But I can see ways around that if we really want to get to the data. That's a possibility. But the question is, are we really comfortable with China's AI, or are we more comfortable with US AI? Or do we want something of our own? I think that's the crux of this thing today. And we mentioned deepfakes. I have to mention before we close. I know we ran out of time, Michelle, but that lady, the CEO of Pace Card got deepfaked, right? And there's a video going around, I share it with you, Michelle, right? Of her endorsing a scam. We also think that these things are North American and we don't really have to worry about it in Barbados. Her name is Alison. I can't remember Alison's last name, right? But because in terms of a figure in financial services sector, and she's a trusted individual. There are not very many people that's not in the political side of things as trusted as her on the financial side. So someone defaked her to start selling a scam or like one of these other scams that you ain't calling names now. I'm pinpointing the body specific. But imagine now, and we said this in the same group, Michelle, A does not get worse, A gets better. And while you can pick it apart and say, but moving correctly, blah, blah, blah. A gets better. It doesn't get worse with time. We have at least 18 months before the general election. You can imagine now how raise to believe is this coming up mouth, right? Because no, you can't believe what you see, right? And I go back to Edward when he talk about culture, right? Because right now our culture is to believe the first thing that drop, and it'll be all hell to pull it back. Part of the problem that I have right now is that BCSI, well, it is government supported, is not government. I'm yet to have a position on AI as a strategic asset for the country from the government, right? Because it is so fundamental. We don't even know, and Edward mentioned it. We can have AI in heart monitors. We can have AI in what you call Internet of Things. narrow areas, which is what he said. So when we were looking at large language models, we don't even know if AI is coming as a package deal with some tools that we're importing into Barbados right now. That government itself may be adopting, and by extension, open up the risk. My thing is, we have more of these types of conversations, Michelle. I'm sorry that it is. I'm happy for BCSI, but the conversation cannot start and end with BCSI. This must be a national call to arms to say AI is so pervasive in our country that we must have a national policy on it. We know got we get a smell of a national policy concerning cybersecurity. We cannot wait to the decades that pass to not wait for decades to come to deal with artificial intelligence as a national security threat. Because the difference is that cybersecurity we say cybersecurity is everyone's business, but we really know is everyone's business. In other words, then the Edwards of Barbados are the ones that are pushing this, but it's everyone's business. We can tell you, everyone is going to basically use AI. If you've got Microsoft Office, you have Copilot, they're going to use it. Edward, on the other hand, gets his hands dirty in the mud with firewalls and technology and strategy. Those are niche set of people. But AI now is everybody's touching it. And there's no government position on it. And part of the problem where people are curious and where we have such a high turnout tonight is that people are looking for answers and leadership. Rightly so. Because yesterday, I made sure I'm going to send it to you. There is a app that called me. It called me yesterday. And basically, it works like this. It's LinkedIn powered. And if you're looking to network with people, so you want to, BCSI know is looking for funding. All right. And it doesn't know who will be the best people to talk to for funding. But LinkedIn has every business person, every millionaire, every billionaire has a LinkedIn account. So basically, right, you tell it on LinkedIn, hey, I'm looking for funding. It says, no problem, I'm going to call you. In less than 3 minutes, my phone rang and it was AI saying, hey, Stephen, this is Bordy. Have you ever talked to AI before? I said, no. He said, well, this is about, I'm not going to tell you my plans, so we had a discussion, right? But I had a discussion for 5 minutes with AI, and it sounded human, not Beijing, sounded Australian. So our offshore sector has about 3 years left, if so much, because the number of offshore sector jobs are people calling people and engaging in some customer service driven role. You can call back that same number and talk to AI. I can call back that same number now. I actually stored it in my phone. And it said, Stephen, hey, at the end of it, he said, Stephen, if you have any other questions or thoughts, want to talk, me, call me back and we would have a chat. Just like that. Conversational.
You see, Stephen and Michelle, this is where DeepSeek, because of the media frenzy, has raised the alarm, as America said it, can be a national security issue. Why? Why? What will make them say that? Even if it's the case or not, what would make them say that? The reason why, and we saw that again within the American elections, being able to change the thought process of persons, being able to convince someone to do something that they wouldn't think they would do. Now, if you take that into the context of the Caribbean, where governments are deploying AI, a lot of these have root sources where the information is stored, where those AI is being, every application runs within the cloud. It's not within our cloud. Who's control? We saw this here with the CIA, with Edward Snowden, and the national security and so forth. You have backdoors into these systems. You can tamper the LLM. So if I have my children every single day playing, and I guiding them to laugh and attend these things, and you put thoughts in their head, the person's playing, you see in certain videos always coming up training you. People spend millions of dollars every single day learning how to hack human beings. It is not a joke. It is not a conspiracy theory. It's already been said at the World Economic Forum. It means then that AI used in an ungoverned approach can become that country national risk, become a national security risk. And until governments in the region understand how it can change their political outlook, how it can change how people operate within their own countries, then you continue to see AI deploy in a very haphazard way. Every single AI discussion from since last year talk about the wonderful development. It's good. I mean, we have to agree. It is good. But one of the things, or they forget what the gentleman name. The president and Hermad said it, and he was very bold, but for many of us, it's correct. AI is going to replace many people's jobs. We cannot ignore that approach. You know, when you call companies, now it's AI answering. I'm going to put you through to a human agent that will be able to better help you, right? So you can see like secretaries and so forth. So what I'm saying is, and even talking about CEOs, if you can have a CEO AI, what do you think about the persons from the CEO right down to the bottom? You already have robotics doing a lot of stuff. They're driven by AI. So what I'm saying is that we have to, especially from a governance perspective, government takes the lead in this. Government, then you have the private and public partnership, you have international partnership. And while many will believe that we need to really be innovative and get to market first, DeepSeek again have shown us many times when you get to market first and you try to get things out there very quickly, it comes with a lot of inherent risks. And that risk is no different than any other risk in other products. But because DeepSeek was of the main focus, you're going to have, in this case, a lot of American companies highlighting why not to use it. It's bad for you. It's bad food. Again, it's cornering of the market. The fact is that we, as a Caribbean nation and within the region, needs to look at AI in a more holistic approach and build AI. Either use existing language model, go through it, may not be code by code, but try to understand what that output would be to a whole variety of inputs that we can give it because we do not have controls of those models. We don't have the inner workings, let's put it that way. So from a government's point of view, where I sit, that is where we also need to look at. Yes, that include the privacy, the data governance, the integrity, and so forth, the proper use of AI, even in terms of innovation, government being able to support not only universities, but there's a lot of guys here, and I have met a number of them that are so passionate about AI. They're doing work in AI, but they don't have the funding. They can't get the funding to do even more. And some of them, I would even say, will not fall under university because they're not in line with the university. But these guys are very good at what they do. So the AI development, as Stephen said, and I agree with him 100%. Government has to take a holistic approach, start talking about AI and going all over the world and so forth. Look and see what is already being done out there, learn from that, and let us start working collectively. We have a number of different education institutions within the region. Let's bring them together. It's not all education, but try to involve many stakeholders. That's a problem we have in the region. For instance, we want to do a national cybersecurity strategy or policy. When we look at what the ITU recommend or what the big countries recommend, we have all these various stakeholders within the private and public and so forth. We don't have that. So AI approach needs to be, get back to the ground, involve all the many stakeholders and develop something for the region. That's my last comment I think I have for the night. For everyone here on the call, that AI is good. It has its negatives, but the fact is we need to develop AI within the region. If we want to be happy with our cultural, social, and political and whatever development we have, we need to make sure that we fashion AI in our own likeness.
And I,
Otherwise,
I,
somebody likeness will come over us.
and that's true. I mean, AI is here to stay. It's with us every day. It's in Siri and Google and Alexa, who will probably say something to me now because she just heard her name in my house. but they're
And
gonna
she's
they're
always listening.
and
She's always listening.
she
I know
actually just
you.
asked me something because she heard me call her name. So Stephen, I'm gonna give you the last word. From us, we talked about deep sea. You've given us a good insight into deep seek, and we understand now that it is not necessary that deep seek is bad or good or worse than open AI. It is just another form of AI, and the fear might be learned fear or of things from China bad and things from the US are good. But I'm gonna give you the last word, Stephen, and then we'll close off the session.
Okay, so I would close by saying this. While it presents an opportunity, I think that part of the problem or challenge that we will have, not problem, is the fact that we are still very much a paper-based society, in that a lot of critical data that we could benefit from AI from in terms of the intelligence that it can gather very quickly is trapped in paper. Part of this discussion, or what we've alluded to in this discussion, is something called digital transformation. Um, AI benefits from having rich data sets, a complete understanding of what your data in your organization looks like. But if you have, take for example, 80-20, in terms of 80% paper, 20% I guess digital, because it's maybe it's a finance package that has a specific data set. AI will only be able to actually see so much because AI can't see paper, not unless it's digitized. So I'm thinking that there are a couple of things that we need to draw on here. One, while we are, and as Edward alluded to, looking for a strategy that is safe and a path forward, the general we, in terms of the professionals in Barbados, must start also having conversations about what data looks like to us, data governance, what our data sets look like, how much of our operation is truly digitized and running efficiently with the use of current systems, not even AI yet. Because if you're inefficient, AI is not a magic wand to go poof, I'm an efficient organization. So part and parcel of this thing will have to be walking and chewing gum at the same time. While we're looking for the BCSIs to take leadership and government to actually have a national to it, we also must, within ourselves as business owners and people within organizations, look at the systems that we currently have. If we do an analysis, we have 85, 90% of our organization digitized, then, you know, that's a perfect model and opportunity for AI to give you additional insight into what your data is saying. Because a large part of the problem is that data is trapped in different silos, right? An Excel sheet here, a database here, an online system there, and it's all over the place. And as a data privacy specialist, that's also a nightmare because if some person was to say, I want my data deleted from your organization, and you go, well, I got some in Google and I got some in Bamboo for HR, and I have a couple of Excel sheets here, and you don't have to think about where's my data. All right, that has nothing to do with AI, but it's a risk because the law states that your data must be resilient, accessible, and in a way that if you have to now delete it or stop processing it in the first place, a data subject has a right to ask for that. And if you don't have your data in a way that can be easily controlled, right, AI is not going to help you. So I think I'll end by saying we need to start having a conversation concerning data governance and what data we have and what's the best way to use it. Thank you.
All right, gentlemen, I would like to thank you on behalf of everyone that joined us today, um, taking us through a conversation about deep state. I think that we all learned something. I certainly learned a lot. AI for me is a friend, but obviously everything is yin and yang. There's balance in everything. There's good and there's bad. And I think that we need to know how to harness the bad and be aware, harness the good, but still be aware of the impact of the negative aspects of new technologies, not only AI. So I want to thank you for joining us, everybody that was on the webinar today. I want to thank you, and I want to thank you, Stephen and Edward, our experts for dissecting this subject for us this morning, this evening. And I wish everybody, if you're traveling home, travel safely and have a good night. Thank you so much.
Thank you.